My sister-in-law pretended to be me to cancel my wedding, then stood up crying during the ceremony to fake a cancer diagnosis. When I asked her why, she rolled her eyes and said, "Someone needed to show you life isn't a fairy tale." I didn't say a word. That was 7 months ago. Last night, she called me 15 times and left 8 voicemails I didn't answer. 6 months ago, my sister-in-law Becca told me she was going to intentionally ruin my wedding, and that there was nothing I could do about it. At first, I thought she was joking, but she looked at me with a stone-cold face, telling me that because her own wedding had been ruined, which happened because she got too drunk and needed to be escorted by the ambulance, everyone else deserved to feel her pain. I stood there in disbelief. Becca had always been a little crazy, but she never did anything like this before. Part of me even thought she was bluffing, but just in case, I told my fiancé David about it. It was very hard, especially considering his father had just passed and he was still grieving, but he needed to know. As expected, David was furious, and we wanted to just uninvite Becca, but we couldn't. You see, their mom's health had worsened substantially ever since her husband's passing, and doctors warned her that any added stress could hospitalize her. Becca knew this, and she actually reached out to us, leveraging her mother's sickness, telling us if we uninvite her, she will cause so much chaos that her mother's heart will give out. She said her mother's blood will be on our hands, and so we kept Becca on the guest list, and soon enough, she got started. During my wedding dress fitting, Becca accidentally knocked an entire glass of red wine down the front of my gown. The dress I'd spent months dreaming about was ruined in seconds. I was devastated, heartbroken, all while Becca was just smiling. But I knew that me being sad is something that would make her happy. So instead of crumbling, I went out and found an even more amazing dress to wear. The look on Becca's face when she saw me glowing in my new gown was priceless. I could tell she was seething, and that her manipulation wasn't over. She tried to sabotage our venue next. She called pretending to be me, trying to cancel the booking. Normally this wouldn't have worked. Venues usually contact you and ask you directly if you made a change if something like that ever happens. But the woman on the receiving end of the line was very new, and she didn't even think to make sure it was actually me calling. She just canceled the venue. No calls, no confirmation, nothing. Becca had won. At least she thought she did. Because as it turned out, the manager had overheard the phone conversation that was going on, and he noticed the lack of confirmation. He called me immediately to confirm I had made the change, and we were both horrified when I said no. Luckily, he was extremely nice about it, undoing the canceling, and as an apology, he even offered us some very nice upgrades completely for free. As you can imagine, everything that was happening was incredibly stressful, and the fact Becca just wouldn't quit made it even worse. For my bachelorette party, Becca showed up smiling, with David's ex-girlfriend walking right beside her. My stomach sank. David was shocked, and when he went out to the back with his ex-girlfriend, I got this sinking feeling in my stomach. Becca just kept smiling this creepy smile at me the whole time, until David and his ex came out. They looked furious, and were both walking straight towards Becca. They took her outside, and David came back alone a few minutes later. As it turned out, Becca had manipulated David's ex into believing that he was cheating on me, and she brought her here so she could talk to me and convince me to dump David. It was crazy. Every part of me was screaming to invite this be. But family dynamics are complicated. David's mom's health was really bad. We just couldn't risk it. Alas, our wedding day arrived, and despite everything Becca had tried, it felt perfect. The sun was shining, David's mom had a genuine smile on her face, and I almost forgot all about Rebecca. But then me and David stood at the altar, and the minister spoke those dreaded words, asking if anyone objected. Of course, Becca stood up. My heart dropped, and I grabbed David's hand so hard my knuckles turned white. But it was strange. Instead of looking angry, Becca had tears streaming down her face. The whole room froze, waiting for her to say something. But what she said next knocked the wind out of all of us. "I'm sorry," she choked out between sobs. "I just found out I have terminal cancer, and I couldn't keep it inside on this day. I'm so sorry." The entire room went silent, and David's mom collapsed onto the floor, clutching her chest. I immediately ran to David's mom while everyone else seemed frozen in shock. The wedding planner, Morgan, was already on the phone with 911, her voice shaking as she explained the emergency. David knelt beside his mother, holding her hand and begging her to stay with us. I could see the panic in his eyes as he looked from his collapsed mother to Becca, who was still sobbing in the corner. The white roses in the centerpieces seemed to mock the chaos unfolding in what should have been the happiest day of our lives. The ambulance arrived within minutes, sirens wailing outside the elegant venue we had spent months selecting. The paramedics rushed in with their equipment, quickly assessed David's mom, and loaded her onto a stretcher. They said she was having a heart attack and needed immediate medical attention. David went with them in the ambulance, his face pale with worry, his new wedding band catching the light as he squeezed his mother's hand. I promised to meet him at the hospital after dealing with our guests, my wedding dress swishing around my ankles as I tried to maintain composure. Our wedding coordinator Jessica took charge, calmly explaining to everyone that we needed to postpone the reception due to a family emergency. Most guests were understanding, though confused and concerned. Several of my college friends offered to help clean up, while David's aunts gathered the wedding gifts to store safely. I noticed Becca had disappeared during the commotion, which struck me as odd given her supposed bombshell announcement about having terminal cancer that had triggered this whole nightmare. At the hospital, I found David in the waiting room, his head in his hands, his tuxedo jacket discarded on the chair beside him. The doctors had taken his mom, Eleanor, into emergency surgery. We sat there for hours, barely speaking, just holding hands and waiting for news. The antiseptic smell and harsh fluorescent lighting created a surreal backdrop to what should have been our wedding night. Around midnight, the doctor finally came out to tell us Eleanor had survived the surgery. She would need time to recover, but she was stable. David broke down in tears of relief, and I held him close, his body shaking against mine. The next morning, while Eleanor was resting in her hospital room surrounded by beeping machines and IV drips, David's cousin Taylor came to visit. She pulled us aside with a strange look on her face, her eyebrows knitted with concern. "I need to tell you something about Becca," she said quietly, glancing around to ensure no nurses were within earshot. Taylor explained that after leaving the wedding, Becca had gone to a bar where she ran into Taylor's husband William. After a few drinks, Becca started laughing about how she had totally ruined that perfect wedding. When William asked about her cancer, she just winked and said, "What cancer?" She then ordered another round of shots, seemingly celebrating her performance. I felt my blood run cold, my hands clenching into fists in the pockets of the jeans I'd changed into. David's face hardened as Taylor continued. Apparently, Becca had admitted to William that she made up the cancer story to cause drama. She thought it was funny how everyone had reacted, especially Eleanor dropping like a stone. She'd even mimicked Eleanor's collapse, laughing as she did so. David was furious. I had never seen him so angry, his normally gentle eyes blazing with rage. We decided not to tell Eleanor yet. She needed to focus on healing, but we knew we had to confront Becca, who had been David's friend since high school and my bridesmaid. We found her at her apartment the next day. The place was cluttered with takeout containers and unwashed clothes, a stark contrast to the put-together image she always presented. When we confronted her with what we knew, she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she laughed in our faces, her mascara slightly smudged under her eyes. "You two think you're so perfect with your perfect love story," she sneered, crossing her arms defensively. "Someone needed to show you that life isn't a fairy tale." She went on to explain how her own marriage had fallen apart 3 years ago. Her husband had cheated on her with his coworker, then left Becca for this woman. Since then, she couldn't stand seeing happy couples, especially ones getting married. She admitted she'd been planning to disrupt our wedding for months, and the cancer lie was just what she came up with in the moment. She'd even practiced her tearful announcement in the mirror, she told us with a twisted pride. Over the next few weeks, as Eleanor recovered in a private room filled with get-well cards and flowers, Becca didn't stop there. She started spreading rumors among our friends and family, her poison seeping through our social circles like ink in water. She told David's cousins that I had cheated on him during our engagement. She told my friends that David had gambling debts he was hiding from me. Each lie was calculated to drive a wedge between us, targeting our individual insecurities with frightening precision. Some people actually believed her. My friend Jamie stopped talking to me for a week after Becca convinced her I had made fun of Jamie's recent breakup. David's uncle Michael questioned him about these supposed gambling debts, concerned that David was starting our marriage on shaky financial ground. We spent countless evenings making calls and sending messages, trying to repair the damage Becca was causing. The worst part was when Becca visited Eleanor in the hospital. She acted so sympathetic, bringing flowers and offering support, her voice dripping with false concern, all while telling Eleanor that David and I were fighting constantly since the wedding disaster. She suggested that maybe we weren't meant to be together after all, and the heart attack was a sign from the universe that this marriage shouldn't happen. She even had the audacity to suggest that perhaps Eleanor's collapse had saved me from making a terrible mistake. Eleanor, still weak from her surgery, started to worry about us. She called David daily, asking if everything was okay between us. The stress was visible on her face during our visits, which slowed her recovery. The doctors noted her elevated blood pressure whenever the topic of our relationship came up, adding another layer of concern. We tried to reassure Eleanor, but Becca had planted seeds of doubt. She was like a spider, weaving a web of lies around our relationship. David and I were strong together, but the constant defense against these attacks was exhausting. We barely had time to process our own feelings about the ruined wedding day between hospital visits and damage control. Things came to a head when Becca somehow got access to my social media account. She sent messages to David that made it look like I was flirting with an old boyfriend. When David questioned me about it, I was completely confused until we figured out what had happened. We realized she must have seen me enter my password during wedding preparations and memorized it. That was the final straw. We decided to gather everyone together, our closest friends and family, including Eleanor, who was finally well enough to leave the hospital. We invited Becca too, telling her it was a reconciliation dinner. She arrived looking smug, clearly thinking she had successfully driven us apart. At the dinner, held at Eleanor's house with its warm lighting and familiar comfort, we calmly presented all the evidence of Becca's lies. We had screenshots of conversations, testimonies from people she had tried to manipulate, and even a recording William had made at the bar where she admitted to faking cancer. The faces around the table shifted from confusion to shock to anger, as the full extent of her deception became clear. Becca tried to deny everything at first, then tried to turn it around on us, claiming we were ganging up on her. But the evidence was too clear. One by one, people expressed their hurt and disappointment in her actions. The room that had hosted so many happy family gatherings now witnessed this painful confrontation. Eleanor, who had always treated Becca like a daughter, was the most devastated. "I welcomed you into our family," she said quietly, her hand resting over her heart. "I trusted you, and you used my health crisis as a tool in your games." The room fell silent. Becca looked around, realizing she had no allies left. Her face changed from defensive to defeated as she saw the hurt in everyone's eyes. For a brief moment, her mask slipped, and I caught a glimpse of the profound loneliness that must have driven her to such extremes. Eleanor, despite her gentle nature, was firm. She told Becca that she was no longer welcome in their home or their lives. Others followed suit, including Becca's own mother, who had been horrified to learn about the cancer lie and had driven 3 hours to be at this dinner. Becca left that night with no one on her side, the door closing behind her with a finality that brought both relief and sadness. The last we heard, she moved to another state to start fresh, according to a mutual acquaintance who ran into her brother. David and I finally had our proper wedding reception a month later. It was smaller than planned, but filled with genuine love and support. The venue was different. Eleanor's backyard garden rather than the expensive hall we'd originally booked, but somehow more meaningful. Eleanor, now much healthier, gave a touching speech about how true love withstands challenges, her voice strong and clear in the evening air. As for me and David, the experience actually strengthened our bond. We learned how to communicate better through crisis, and how to trust each other when others tried to come between us. Our honeymoon was delayed but sweeter for having overcome such obstacles together. I still think about Becca sometimes, not with anger, but with sadness for someone so consumed by bitterness that she would go to such lengths to destroy others' happiness. I hope she finds peace someday, but from a very, very safe distance from us. Sometimes when David and I talk about starting a family, I wonder what lessons we'll take from this experience to teach our children about friendship, forgiveness, and the power of truth. Just last week, that conversation about children became more urgent when I found out I'm pregnant. We hadn't planned it quite this soon, but David's face lit up with such joy when I told him that any doubts I had melted away. His blue eyes crinkled at the corners as he wrapped me in his arms, whispering about nursery colors and tiny shoes. We agreed to keep it quiet until after the first trimester, wanting this happiness to be just ours for a little while. Each night, we'd lie in bed discussing names and imagining what our child might look like. David's dimples, maybe my curly hair. Our bubble of peace burst 3 days later when my phone rang at 2 a.m. It was my dad, his voice shaking as he told me Mom had been rushed to the hospital with chest pains. David and I threw on clothes and raced to the hospital, my mind spinning with worst-case scenarios the entire drive. The roads were eerily empty, streetlights casting long shadows as David gripped the steering wheel, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my trembling hand. We found Dad in the waiting room, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen him. His usually neat silver hair stood on end, and his shirt was buttoned wrong. The doctors confirmed Mom had suffered a heart attack, but they'd stabilized her condition. When we were finally allowed to see her, tubes and monitors surrounded her pale form. She squeezed my hand weakly and tried to smile. The steady beep of her heart monitor punctuated the heavy silence of the room. During her recovery, something unexpected happened. Mom's doctor, a thorough woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, mentioned being confused about some medication interactions and asked if she was seeing an oncologist. Mom looked puzzled and said no. The doctor explained that her chart showed she'd been prescribed medications typically used for cancer patients. This made no sense until I remembered Becca's recent visits to Mom, often bringing her special supplements and herbal teas that would boost her immune system. Becca had insisted these natural remedies were helping with her own cancer recovery, a battle she'd been documenting on social media for months. A sick feeling washed over me. I asked the doctor to run tests on the remaining supplements in Mom's house. Dad brought them in the next day, and the results were shocking. They contained traces of medications that, when combined with Mom's heart medication, could cause serious problems. The doctor reported this to hospital administration, who contacted the police. I sat in the hospital corridor afterward, my hands shaking as I tried to process what this might mean. While this investigation was happening, Becca showed up at the hospital with flowers and a concerned expression. She wore a headscarf that she claimed covered her thinning hair from chemotherapy, though I'd never actually seen any evidence of hair loss. She hugged Dad and asked about Mom in a voice so convincing that for a moment, I doubted my suspicions. Then she saw me watching her, and something cold flickered in her eyes before she masked it with a smile. She touched my arm as she passed, her nails digging in slightly too hard to be accidental. That night, David suggested we look into Becca's cancer claims more carefully. We contacted the cancer support group she claimed to attend, only to discover no one there had ever heard of her. The specialist she mentioned didn't exist at the hospital where she supposedly received treatment. Each dead end confirmed my growing suspicions, leaving a hollow feeling in my stomach that had nothing to do with morning sickness. The final piece fell into place when Mom's friend Margaret visited. Her flowery perfume filled the hospital room as she fussed over Mom, adjusting pillows and bringing homemade soup in a thermos. She mentioned running into Becca's ex-husband Tyler at the grocery store. Tyler had asked about Becca's recovery with genuine confusion. According to him, Becca had never had cancer. Their marriage had ended because of her increasingly manipulative behavior and lies. Margaret had dismissed it as bitterness until she saw my face. When confronted by the police about the supplements, Becca broke down. She admitted to tampering with Mom's medication, though she claimed she never meant to cause serious harm. She just wanted Mom too sick to attend our wedding. The cancer story had been a complete fabrication designed to gain sympathy and drive a wedge between David and me. I watched the police interview recording later, stunned by how quickly her tears came and went, how calculated each sob seemed. The truth about her motives emerged during her court-ordered therapy sessions. Her marriage to Tyler had ended badly, leaving her bitter and resentful of anyone else's happiness, especially mine. She couldn't stand seeing me build the life she felt she deserved. Each time she saw David and me together, it reminded her of her failures. The therapist's notes, shared as part of the legal proceedings, revealed a pattern of jealousy that had been building for years. Mom's recovery was slow but steady. The doctor said she was lucky the heart attack hadn't been more severe. As she regained her strength, she also gained clarity about Becca's behavior over the years. She recalled how Becca had subtly undermined our relationship from the beginning, making small comments about David that planted seeds of doubt. Remember when she suggested David looked like her ex? Mom said one afternoon, and how she always mentioned how busy his job kept him, as if warning me you'd be neglected. The hardest part for Mom was accepting that her own daughter had deliberately put her health at risk. When Becca was released on bail pending her trial, Mom refused to see her. This decision clearly pained her, but she remained firm. I would sometimes find her looking at Becca's childhood photos, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. Dad supported Mom completely, his usual easygoing nature hardened by what Becca had done. He removed all photos of Becca from their living room, placing them in a box in the attic. Some family members tried to make excuses for Becca, suggesting she needed help rather than punishment. Eleanor, our aunt who had always favored Becca, initially defended her, but when she saw Mom's medical records and the police report, even she couldn't deny the truth. One by one, those who had believed Becca's lies distanced themselves from her. Family gatherings became smaller but somehow more genuine. David and I focused on moving forward. The pregnancy progressed well, though the stress of everything sometimes left me worried about the baby. David became even more protective, screening my calls and making sure I rested enough. He installed a security system in our home, something we'd never felt necessary before. His parents were wonderfully supportive, bringing meals and helping with household chores when morning sickness hit me hard. His mother taught me to knit, and we spent peaceful evenings evenings creating tiny hats and booties. Becca made one last attempt to destroy our happiness. She created fake social media accounts to spread rumors about David being unfaithful. For a few days, the whispers reached some of our friends, causing uncomfortable questions. But David's reputation for honesty and our solid relationship meant most people dismissed the rumors immediately. Those who initially believed the gossip apologized when the accounts were traced back to Becca. The final confrontation came at Becca's sentencing hearing. She received probation and mandatory psychiatric treatment rather than jail time. As she left the courtroom, she stopped in front of me. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she whispered that someday I would understand what it felt like to lose everything I loved. Her breath smelled of mint, and her eyes were clear and cold. I didn't respond with anger. I simply told her I hoped she would find peace and walked away, David's hand firmly in mine. That was the last time I saw her. She moved to another state shortly after, cutting contact with everyone in the family. Sometimes I wonder if she's found a new life, new people to manipulate, or if she's finally getting the help she needs. Mom's health improved steadily over the following months. The experience changed her in unexpected ways. She became more discerning about relationships and more appreciative of honest ones. She and I grew closer than we'd been in years, especially as my pregnancy advanced and she shared her wisdom about motherhood. We spent weekends preparing freezer meals for after the baby's arrival, her teaching me family recipes I'd never bothered to learn before. Today marks 6 months since Mom's heart attack. We're gathering at my parents' house to celebrate both her recovery and to reveal whether we're having a boy or a girl. The nursery is half painted, waiting for today's news. David keeps suggesting names that make me laugh, and Mom has already knitted 3 tiny blankets. The sealed envelope from our last ultrasound sits on our mantle, tempting us daily. Life isn't perfect. I still have moments of anxiety, wondering if Becca might reappear someday. But those moments grow fewer as time passes. What remains stronger is the knowledge that our family, the one we chose and the one we're creating, survived the worst kind of betrayal and emerged more tightly bonded than before. As I feel the baby kick inside me, I'm reminded that even after the darkest storms, new life and hope always find a way to break through. I feel a flutter of excitement at the movement. David notices my smile and places his hand on my belly, his palm warm against the stretched fabric of my shirt. We share a moment of quiet joy before my phone rings, the cheerful melody cutting through our peaceful moment. It's Mom. Her voice sounds strange, strained, nothing like her usual energetic self. Eleanor? What's wrong? I ask, instantly alert, my maternal instinct already sensing trouble. David watches my face change, concern clouding his gentle brown eyes. I grab my keys from the counter and tell him we need to go now. Mom is having chest pains. She called 911 but wanted us to know. My fingers tremble as I gather my purse, mind racing with worst-case scenarios. We race to the hospital, my heart pounding against my ribs. The baby kicks again as if sensing my distress, a small reminder of life amid my fear. David drives with focused intensity, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The 20-minute drive feels endless, each red light an eternity. In the emergency room waiting area, the antiseptic smell makes my stomach turn. We pace the worn linoleum floor for what feels like hours before a doctor finally approaches us. Mom had a heart attack, but she's stable. The relief makes my knees weak, and David steadies me with a strong arm around my shoulders. When we're allowed to see her, she looks small in the hospital bed, her normally vibrant presence diminished. Tubes and wires connect her to beeping machines that monitor her fragile condition. Her silver hair lies flat against the pillow, lacking its usual careful styling. Her face brightens when she sees us, though pain lines her eyes. "I'm sorry to scare you," she whispers, her voice barely audible over the mechanical hums. I hold her hand, noticing how cool her skin feels, and tell her not to worry. The doctor explains she'll need to stay for observation and tests. They'll monitor her cardiac enzymes and perform an echocardiogram tomorrow. As we settle in for a long night, the vinyl chair creaking under my weight, my phone buzzes with a text. It's from an unknown number, but the message makes my blood run cold. Heard about Eleanor. So sad. Hope it wasn't the stress I caused. B. I show David the text, my hand shaking slightly. His jaw tightens, a muscle working in his cheek. We decide not to tell Mom about it. She needs to focus on recovery, not on Becca's mind games. The next morning, while Mom sleeps, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, I step into the hallway to call Dr. Patterson, Becca's supposed oncologist. After our wedding disaster, I never thought to verify her cancer story. The receptionist, with a professionally pleasant voice, puts me on hold, then returns with surprising news. They have no patient named Becca Mitchell. Never have. My hands shake as I tell David, who stands by the vending machine clutching 2 untouched coffees. The cancer was a lie. All of it. A cruel manipulation to ruin our wedding. The betrayal cuts deeper than I thought possible, like a knife twisting in an already painful wound. Mom improves over the next few days, color gradually returning to her cheeks. During a quiet moment when we're alone, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across her hospital room, she confesses something. Becca visited her the day before her heart attack. They argued about the wedding incident. Becca admitted she lied about having cancer. She wanted me to convince you to forgive her, Mom says, fidgeting with the edge of her blanket. When I refused, she got angry, said terrible things about you and David, called your marriage a mistake waiting to happen. The stress of that confrontation likely contributed to Mom's heart attack. Rage builds inside me, hot and dangerous, but I focus on staying calm for the baby, who responds to my tension with a series of kicks. We bring Mom home after 5 days. David sets up her medication schedule with meticulous care while I prepare her bedroom, fluffing pillows and arranging her favorite books within reach. The doorbell rings, its chime echoing through the quiet house. I open it to find Becca standing there, holding a bouquet of lilies, Mom's favorite. "I heard about Mom," she says, trying to step inside, her perfume overwhelming in the confined space of the doorway. I block the entrance, feeling my heart rate accelerate. "You need to leave," Her face hardens, the familiar stubborn set of her jaw that I've seen since childhood. You can't keep me from seeing our mother. David appears behind me, a solid, reassuring presence. She doesn't want to see you, Becca. Not after what you did. Becca's mask slips, revealing the ugly truth beneath her composed exterior. Your perfect little family won't last, she hisses, spittle forming at the corners of her mouth. He'll leave you just like Richard left me. So that's it. Her failed marriage to Richard drives her vendetta against us. I close the door in her face, the sound of it shutting giving me momentary satisfaction, but her words linger like a bad smell. Over the next weeks, Becca escalates her campaign. She sends emails to our friends with twisted versions of events, painting herself as the victim. She contacts David's workplace with false accusations of embezzlement that require him to have uncomfortable conversations with his boss. She even posts on neighborhood social media claiming we're mistreating Mom, forcing us to explain the situation to concerned neighbors who bring casseroles and suspicious glances. Mom is devastated by Becca's behavior, often crying quietly when she thinks we can't hear. She finally blocks Becca's number after receiving dozens of manipulative messages that alternate between guilt-tripping and outright threats. I enabled her for too long, she admits one evening as we sit together on the porch swing. Ever since your father died, I've made excuses for her behavior. At my 7-month checkup, the doctor notices my blood pressure is high. She warns me about stress during pregnancy, explaining the potential complications with clinical detachment that only increases my anxiety. David and I decide to take legal action, filing for a restraining order against Becca. The paperwork feels heavy in my hands, weighted with the finality of what we're doing. The court date arrives on a rainy Tuesday. Becca shows up in a conservative navy dress, her hair pulled back, with a practiced victim expression. She claims she's being persecuted for a simple misunderstanding about her health. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, isn't fooled. Medical records confirm she never had cancer treatments. The restraining order is granted, the gavels sound marking a small victory. Outside the courthouse, raindrops beating on our umbrellas, Becca approaches Mom, who came to support us despite her still fragile health. How can you choose them over your own daughter? She demands, her voice carrying across the wet pavement. Mom stands taller than I've seen in years, her spine straight despite the pain I know she still feels. You chose lies over family, Becca. I raised you better than this. Becca's face contorts with rage, all pretense abandoned. You'll regret this, all of you. That night, we discover our car tires slashed, the rubber hanging in sad flaps. The police take a report, but without evidence, there's little they can do. We install security cameras around the house, their presence both reassuring and a sad reminder of our new reality. 2 weeks later, they capture Becca trying to break in through the back door at 2 a.m., her face clearly visible in the infrared footage. The footage is clear enough for police to arrest her. She's charged with violating the restraining order and attempted breaking and entering. Mom visits Becca at the police station, against our advice. She returns looking older but resolute, the car ride home silent until she finally speaks. She refused to see me, Mom says, staring out the window at the passing landscape. The officer said she blamed me for everything. Becca is released on bail pending trial. Her lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, contacts us about a potential plea deal. In exchange for dropping the breaking and entering charge, she'll agree to move to another state and maintain no contact. We discuss it as a family over dinner, the conversation punctuated by long silences. Mom thinks it might be the only way to truly move forward. She needs a fresh start away from her anger, she says, pushing food around her plate. And we need peace. The prosecutor agrees to the deal. Becca will move to Arizona, where her college roommate lives. She must check in with a probation officer monthly, and cannot return to our state for 3 years. The night before she leaves, she sends one last email. You think you've won, but you haven't. Someday you'll understand why I did everything I did. I delete it without responding, the blue light of the screen illuminating my face in the dark bedroom. We change our locks, email addresses, and phone numbers. Mom joins a support group for parents of estranged children. She grows stronger each week, her voice more confident when she speaks of the future. My due date approaches. We prepare the nursery with yellow walls and woodland creatures, the room becoming a haven of anticipated joy. The anxiety about Becca fades as we focus on our future, though I still sometimes wake from nightmares where she stands over my baby's crib. Mom moves in temporarily to help after the baby comes. Her health has improved dramatically since cutting ties with Becca. I didn't realize how much energy her drama consumed, she tells me as we fold tiny onesies together. On a warm spring evening, my water breaks, soaking through my pajama pants with startling suddenness. David drives us to the hospital while Mom follows in her car. The labor is long but uncomplicated, 18 hours of work rewarded at the end. Our daughter arrives at dawn, perfect and loud, her cries announcing her presence to the world. We name her Hope, not because we're naive about life's challenges, but because we've learned that hope persists even through the darkest times. As I hold her tiny form against my chest, her weight so slight yet so significant, I realize something. Becca tried to destroy us because she couldn't stand our happiness after her own life fell apart. But in trying to break us, she made us stronger, forging bonds that can withstand any storm. Mom takes a picture of the 3 of us, David, Hope, and me. This is going on the mantle, she says, right next to that hideous vase. We laugh, the sound light and healing, and for the first time in months, I feel completely free of Becca's shadow. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Mom's phone rings, cutting through our moment of peace. She answers it, her smile fading as she listens. Her face turns pale, and she clutches at her chest, the phone slipping from her fingers. Mom? I rush to her side as she collapses into a chair, gasping for breath, her eyes wide with panic. David is already calling 911, his voice steady but urgent. Hope stands frozen, her eyes wide with fear, her small hands gripping the edge of the coffee table. I hold Mom's hand, telling her everything will be okay, though my heart pounds with terror. Her skin feels clammy against mine, and her breathing comes in short, painful gasps. The ambulance arrives in minutes, sirens wailing outside our quiet suburban home. The paramedics work quickly, their practiced movements a blur as they attach monitors and place an oxygen mask over Mom's face. They mention something about her heart rhythm being irregular. I climb into the ambulance with her while David promises to follow with hope, his face a mask of controlled worry. At the hospital, everything moves in a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. Doctors rush Mom away through double doors while a nurse with kind eyes guides me to a waiting area. I fill out paperwork with shaking hands, barely able to focus on the questions about insurance and medical history. David and Hope arrive, Hope clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. We huddle together in the sterile waiting room, surrounded by other worried families. Hours pass before a doctor finally approaches us, her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. She explains that Mom had a mild heart attack, likely triggered by stress. They've stabilized her condition, but she'll need to stay for observation and possibly begin medication. When we're allowed to see her, Mom looks small and fragile in the hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines. The stark white sheets make her skin look even paler. She smiles weakly when she sees us, apologizing for scaring everyone. I tell her not to be silly and kiss her forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo mixed with hospital disinfectant. As we sit with Mom, my phone buzzes with a text. It's from Becca, asking what happened. I'm surprised she knows anything, but news travels fast in our small community where everyone seems connected by an invisible web of gossip. I send a brief reply explaining about Mom's heart attack, not expecting much response. Becca shows up at the hospital the next day with an elaborate bouquet of flowers. She seems genuinely concerned, asking detailed questions about Mom's condition and treatment plan. The nurses mention that visiting hours are almost over, and Becca offers to drive me home since David took Hope back earlier to get her to bed on time. In the car, Becca seems different, softer, more like the friend I once knew before our recent tensions. The streetlights cast alternating shadows across her face as she drives. She confesses that her recent behavior has been due to some personal struggles. I listen cautiously, watching her knuckles whiten on the steering wheel, not ready to forgive but willing to hear her out. When we arrive at my house, Becca hugs me awkwardly before leaving, her perfume lingering in the air. Something about the interaction feels off, like a performance not quite mastered, but I'm too exhausted to analyze it. Over the next week, Mom recovers steadily. The doctors say her prognosis is good, but she needs to reduce stress and make lifestyle changes, diet modifications, regular exercise, and better sleep habits. Becca visits the hospital regularly, bringing magazines and snacks. She's always helpful, offering to run errands or sit with Mom so I can rest, winning Mom over with her attentiveness. Then one afternoon, I arrive at the hospital to find Mom upset, her lunch tray untouched beside her. A nurse explains that there was a misunderstanding about medication. Apparently, someone claiming to be family had questioned Mom's treatment plan, causing confusion among the nursing staff. When I ask for details, the description matches Becca perfectly. The distinctive red glasses, the silver bracelet she always wears. I confront Becca the next day when she arrives with a gift basket filled with expensive teas and chocolates. She denies interfering with Mom's care, her eyes wide with practiced innocence, suggesting the nurse must have confused her with someone else. Her explanation seems reasonable, but doubt lingers like a shadow I can't quite shake. A few days later, Mom is released from the hospital. David and I help settle her at home, arranging her medications in a weekly pill organizer, and setting up a comfortable recovery space in the living room where she can watch her favorite shows. Becca stops by frequently, always when David isn't around, bringing homemade soups and fresh flowers. One evening, I overhear Becca talking to Mom from the hallway. She's mentioning something about her cancer treatments being difficult, her voice trembling with emotion. I freeze in the hallway, listening as she describes symptoms and procedures in vivid detail. The nausea after chemotherapy, the bone-deep fatigue, the fear of recurrence. Mom offers sympathy and support, clearly believing every word. I call Dr. Martinez the next day, the oncologist Becca claimed was treating her. The receptionist has no record of a patient named Becca Wilson. I tried 2 other cancer centers in the area with the same result. My suspicion growing with each call. My suspicions growing. I search Becca's name online and find recent photos of her at a beach resort in Cancun, looking healthy and carefree during the time she claimed to be undergoing intensive chemotherapy. Her skin is tanned, her smile bright as she poses with a colorful cocktail. The timestamp confirms it was when she had canceled being my maid of honor, claiming she was too sick to stand through the ceremony. I show the evidence to David, who looks stunned, running his hand through his hair as he studies the photos. We decide to confront Becca together, inviting her over when Mom is resting upstairs. When Becca arrives, her fake concern vanishes as soon as we present what we've discovered. Her expression hardens, the mask of compassion slipping away completely. She doesn't even try to deny it. Instead, she laughs coldly, saying we were too stupid to question her story sooner. She admits faking cancer to ruin our wedding, calling it poetic justice after her own marriage fell apart last year. Her husband left her for someone else, and she couldn't stand watching me have the happiness she lost. She wanted me to feel the pain and disappointment she experienced, to watch my perfect plans crumble as hers had. David remains calm but asks her to leave our home, his voice firm but controlled. Becca turns to go but pauses at the door, her hand on the knob, warning that this isn't over. She knows things about David, she claims, that would make me see him differently. In the following days, Becca launches a campaign to destroy our relationship. She sends me evidence of David's supposed infidelity, doctored photos and fake text messages that arrive at all hours. She contacts my friends with elaborate stories about David's past. She even tells Mom that David was pressuring me to cut her out of our lives after the wedding. Mom, still recovering and vulnerable, begins to question David's character. She mentions concerns about him during our daily visits, repeating things that clearly came from Becca. The trust we've built starts to crack under the constant pressure, like fine china developing hairline fractures. David and I argue for the first time since our wedding, harsh words echoing in our kitchen late at night. The stress affects us both, exactly as Becca intended. But after a tearful night, we make a decision. We won't let her win. We agree to be completely transparent with each other and face Becca's attacks together, united against her manipulation. We gather evidence of Becca's deception, including security camera footage showing her leaving the fake evidence at our door. We record her threatening phone calls and document her contradicting stories, building a case against her lies. When we feel ready, we invite Mom and our closest friends for dinner. We present everything we've discovered about Becca's lies, from the fake cancer to her current manipulation attempts. Mom looks shocked, then deeply hurt by the betrayal from someone she trusted and welcomed into her recovery. The final piece of evidence comes unexpectedly. Becca's ex-husband contacts David after hearing about the situation through mutual friends. He confirms that their marriage ended because of Becca's controlling behavior and constant lies, not because he left her for someone else as she had claimed. Mom's recovery takes on new strength as her anger at Becca's deception replaces her worry about David. She apologizes to him for doubting his character and embraces him as the son she always wanted, tears glistening in her eyes. Together, we decide to cut Becca out of our lives completely. Mom blocks her number, and we alert friends and family to her manipulative behavior. When Becca realizes her plan has failed, she makes one last desperate attempt to cause drama at a family gathering, but no one gives her the reaction she wants. As weeks pass, life settles into a new normal. Mom's health improves steadily with proper medication and reduced stress. Hope asks fewer questions about Aunt Becca, as new experiences fill her days. David and I find our relationship stronger for having weathered the storm together. One evening, as we sit on the porch watching Hope play in the yard, Mom joins us with tea, her steps steadier than they've been in months. She's looking better than she has in a long time, color returned to her cheeks. You know, she says, wrapping her cardigan around her shoulders as the evening breeze picks up. Sometimes it takes nearly losing something to realize how precious it is. I nod, watching my daughter chase fireflies in the twilight, their tiny lights blinking like stars brought down to earth. The future stretches before us, uncertain but full of possibility. Mom's hand suddenly tightens around her teacup. I turn to look at her, and the color that had just returned to her cheeks drains away. Her eyes widen, and the cup slips from her fingers, shattering on the porch. Mom? I jump to my feet as she clutches at her chest, gasping for air. My daughter stops chasing fireflies and stands frozen in the yard. I grab my phone and dial 911, my fingers trembling as I explain what's happening. The operator tells me an ambulance is on the way. I help Mom lie down on the porch swing, trying to keep my voice calm while panic rises in my throat. David rushes outside when he hears the commotion. He takes one look at Mom and springs into action, checking her pulse and helping her into a more comfortable position. The ambulance arrives with flashing lights that paint the neighborhood in pulses of red. The paramedics work quickly, loading Mom onto a stretcher. I'll follow in the car with Lily, David says, already grabbing the keys. You go with your mom. The ride to the hospital passes in a blur of sirens and fear. I hold Mom's hand while the paramedics work around her. At the hospital, they rush her through double doors marked authorized personnel only, and I'm left standing in the waiting room, my heart pounding. David arrives with Lily 20 minutes later. He wraps his arms around me, and I lean into his strength. Lily's small hand slips into mine, her eyes wide with worry. We wait for hours, the hard plastic chairs making my back ache almost as much as the fear squeezing my chest. When the doctor finally comes out, his face is serious but not grim. Your mother had a heart attack, he explains. We've stabilized her, but she'll need to stay for observation and possibly surgery depending on the test results. Relief washes over me. She's alive. The doctor leads us to her room, where she lies pale against white sheets, tubes and wires connecting her to beeping machines. She manages a weak smile when she sees us. David takes Lily to the cafeteria while I sit with Mom. As I hold her hand, my phone buzzes with a text from Becca saying she's on her way. I feel a flicker of gratitude that she's coming, despite our recent tensions. When Becca arrives, she's not alone. Her oncologist, Dr. Chen, is with her. This strikes me as odd, but I'm too worried about Mom to question it. How is she? Becca asks, her voice tight. Stable, I reply. They're running tests. Dr. Chen clears his throat awkwardly. I need to speak with both of you, privately. We step into the hallway, and what Dr. Chen reveals turns my world upside down. Becca never had cancer. She had been lying about her diagnosis, treatments, and appointments. Dr. Chen discovered the deception when the hospital's billing department flagged inconsistencies in her records. I stare at my sister, unable to process what I'm hearing. Why would you lie about something like that? Becca's face hardens. You had everything. The perfect fiancé, the perfect daughter, the perfect life. I wanted you to know what it feels like to have everything fall apart. The truth crashes down on me. The wedding postponement, Mom moving in with her, the constant drama and demands. It was all a calculated plan to disrupt my life. Dr. Chen excuses himself, clearly uncomfortable. I confront Becca, my voice shaking. You lied about having cancer to ruin my wedding? You're precious, David, she spits. So attentive, so caring. Not like Mark, who left me for his secretary after 15 years of marriage. The pieces click into place. Becca's divorce last year had been messier than she let on. Her husband hadn't just grown apart from her. He'd had an affair and left her. So you tried to destroy my happiness because yours was gone? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. I wanted you to see that fairy tales don't exist, she says. That men like David don't stay. I was doing you a favor. David appears at the end of the hallway, Lily's hand in his. He approaches slowly, his expression concerned. Everything okay? He asks. Before I can answer, Becca turns to him with tears in her eyes. David, I need to tell you something about your fiancé. My heart stops. What new lie is she about to tell? She's been meeting with her ex, Becca says. They've been planning to get back together. She's just using you as a safety net. David looks at me, confusion clear on his face. What is she talking about? It's not true, I say firmly. Becca doesn't have cancer. She made it all up to sabotage our wedding, and now she's making up more lies. David's expression shifts from confusion to disbelief. What? I explain everything, doctor. Chen just revealed. David listens, his face growing more troubled with each word. I can prove it, Becca insists, pulling out her phone. I have texts from her ex on her old phone. Texts you faked, I counter, just like you faked your cancer. A nurse approaches, asking us to keep our voices down. We move to a private waiting area where the confrontation continues. Becca shows David screenshots of conversations I supposedly had with my ex. The messages are convincing, but I never wrote them. These are fake, I tell David. I haven't spoken to Tom in years. David studies the messages, then looks up at Becca. These don't sound like her at all, and the timestamps don't make sense. She was with me during most of these supposed conversations. Relief floods through me. David believes me. Becca's plan unravels further when Mom's doctor comes looking for us. The tests show Mom needs a stent, but her prognosis is good. When we return to Mom's room to tell her, Dr. Chen is there, explaining Becca's deception. Mom's face crumples. You lied about having cancer? How could you do that to us? Becca tries to defend herself, but Mom cuts her off. I left my home to take care of you, Mom says, her voice weak but firm. I worried myself sick over you, and it was all a lie? The heart monitor beeps faster, and a nurse hurries in, asking us all to leave. In the hallway, Becca tries one last desperate tactic. Mom always loved you more, she tells me. The perfect daughter who never made mistakes. I was just trying to get some attention for once. By pretending to have a deadly disease? David asks incredulously. By trying to destroy our relationship with lies? Becca has no answer for that. The next few days pass in a whirlwind. Mom has her procedure and begins recovery. The truth about Becca spreads through our family. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who had rallied around her in support now keep their distance, disgusted by her deception. Mom moves back in with me and David after her release from the hospital. Our wedding plans resume, though on a smaller scale. Becca is not invited. One evening, a week before the wedding, Mom joins me on the porch again. Her recovery is going well, though she tires easily. I should have seen through her lies, Mom says quietly. I was so worried about her that I didn't question anything. She fooled all of us, I reply. Not all of you, Mom says. You had doubts. I dismissed them because I couldn't imagine anyone lying about something so serious. The wedding day arrives, simple but beautiful. Lily scatters flower petals down the aisle. David's eyes shine with tears when he sees me in my dress. Mom sits in the front row, smiling through her own tears. Becca doesn't try to contact us or disrupt the ceremony. I later hear from a cousin that she's moved to another state, starting fresh where no one knows her or her lies. As David and I share our first dance as husband and wife, I catch Mom's eye across the room. She raises her glass in a small toast, her smile genuine. The road to this moment was harder than any of us expected, but we made it. That night, after Lily is asleep and David and I are alone, he takes my hand. Your sister was wrong, you know, he says. Fairy tales do exist. They're just not perfect or easy. They're messy and complicated, just like real life. I rest my head on his shoulder, thinking about all we've been through. The future still stretches before us, uncertain but full of possibility. And now, without Becca's shadow hanging over us, it looks brighter than ever.